Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Jonathan Cahn, author of the New York Times bestsellers The Harbinger, The Mystery of the Shemitah, The Book of Mysteries, and The Paradigm, now unveils the oracle in which he opens up the Jubilee and mysteries and a revelation so big that it lies behind everything from the rise and fall of nations and empires, even America, the current events of our day, the future, end-time prophecy, and much more. Could an ancient prophecy and a mysterious ordinance given in a Middle Eastern desert over 3,000 years ago be determining the events of our day? Could some of the most famous people of modern history and current events be secretly linked to this mystery, even a modern president of the United States? Could this ancient revelation pinpoint the events of our times down to the year, month, and day of their occurring? Could a mysterious phenomena be manifesting on the world stage on an exact timeline determined from ancient times? Could these manifestations have altered and now be altering the course of world events? Jonathan Cahn takes the reader on a journey to find the man called the Oracle. One by one, each of the Jubilee and mysteries will be revealed through the giving of a vision. The Oracle will uncover the mysteries of the stranger, the lost city, the man with the measuring line, the land of seven wells, the birds, the number of the end, the man in the black robe, the prophet's song, the matrix of years, the day of the lions, the awakening of the dragon, and much more. The reader will discover the ancient scrolls that contain the appointed words that have determined the course of world history from the onset of modern times up to our day. The revelation is so big that it will involve and open up the mysteries, everything and everyone from Mark Twain to Moses, from King Nebuchadnezzar to Donald Trump, from the fall of empires to the rise of America, from a mystery hidden in a desert cave to another in ancient scroll, from the palace of the Persian Empire to the United States Senate, from the Summer of Love to the Code of Babylon, and much, much more. Ultimately, the oracle will reveal the secret that lies behind end-time prophecy and the mystery of the end of the age. As with the Harbinger in the Book of Mysteries, Jonathan reveals the mysteries through a narrative. A traveler is given 7 keys. Each will open one of 7 doors. Behind each door lies a stream of mysteries. The reader will be taken on a journey of angels and prophetic revelations, waiting to be discovered behind events that are contained behind the 7 doors. The ancient secrets that lie behind the world-changing events of modern times and revelation of what is yet to come. Hailed as a mind-blowing masterpiece, the Oracle will reveal mysteries that are absolutely real, absolutely stunning, mind-blowing, and life-changing. Prepare to be blown away. Jonathan Cahn has addressed members of Congress and spoken at the United Nations and was named along with Billy Graham and Keith Green as one of the top 40 spiritual leaders of the last 40 years who radically changed our world. He's known as a prophetic voice in this generation and for the opening up of the deep mysteries of God. Jonathan leads Hope of the World, bringing God's Word to the nations and help to the world's most needy, and his worship center, Beth Israel, the Jerusalem Center in Wayne, New Jersey. His ministry can be contacted at hopeoftheworld.org, and you can find him at Jonathan Cahn official Facebook page. Here to reveal to us just enough to rock your world is the author of the Oracle, Jonathan Cahn. Jonathan, so great to see you again, my friend.
Hey, always great to be with you.
It's just a pleasure and an amazing read. I read it, and I was captivated. I could not wait until I could climb up and have the next conversation. Shrouded in mystery, but yet unveiling such amazing truth. Tell me, what is the mystery of the Oracle?
Well, Eric, you did great in setting up. I would say that this is the biggest mystery I've ever opened. It is the mystery of the past, present, and future. It is the blueprint of the end times. It is so embracing that, as you mentioned, you on one hand you have Moses and you have Mark Twain, you have Jeremiah, and you have Donald Trump. It's the mystery. It's exact. I mean, it's not only the big picture. It's so precise, or God is so precise that it's intricate. It gives dates. It gives countdowns, time, when things are going to happen, when things had to happen according to His plan. I'll give you an idea. Well, two things to keep in mind, because I know we'll get into the specifics. But one is that for people listening, imagine that there were scrolls around the world that when they are open, and there's an appointed word, and the appointed word is proclaimed or chanted or recited. At key times when those words are recited, the events that they speak about start happening in the world. And this is not just once. This is again and again and again and again. And what if we could find what those words were? Well, that is what the oracle is opening up. One of the things the oracle opened up. Another one is the Jubilee and mysteries. And that is that, for people who know, the Jubilee is the year that whatever you lost your land, you get it back. You come home. Everyone shall return to their own land. Well, the amazing thing is, God said that the prophecy is that in the end times, the Jewish people will have been scattered to the ends of the earth, but at the end, God will bring them back. And this is a key of end time prophecy. This is the key of the coming of Messiah. He cannot come until they're back. And so, but the amazing thing is that the prophetic events of Israel are all tied to this mystery of the Jubilee. They happen like clockwork. I mean, they happen exactly on time when they should. So it is. Those streams are going to be throughout this, the scrolls, the appointed words that tells us what's going to happen, and also this mystery. And the thing is that I'll just mention, I think you may have mentioned it, but yes, it is revealed. The oracle is revealed in this narrative. I mean, it's all real. You read it, so it's filled with things. Eric, I had to take 3,000 pages of notes, of downloads, and figure out how to get that into this book. And so the thing is, it's filled with that, but there's a story that takes you in, and that is that an oracle is speaking these mysteries of God, and behind these 7 doors of revelation. So one door keeps going, each one leads up from the past, the present, and then the future. So that's a kind of setup for the mysteries that we'll uncover.
Jonathan, your style has always been that you have come across something and you begin to see a connection. And when you start to see the connection, you begin to explore to see whether or not that connection is repeated. And some of them lead to dead ends, and they happen twice, and you hit a brick wall. But in this particular case, you came upon it. And what's so fascinating to me is the book doesn't really tell, and maybe some of the packaging that comes with it will tell. But where did this begin with you? The vision, and then seeing how it connected. This had to be so a spiritual adrenaline rush for you that it was really quite uncanny.
Yeah, that's a great question that I don't always get into. That's great. Yeah, well, first of all, you're right. The way it came from, starting with the harbinger, the paradigm on it. It is that things come to me, and then I have to seek. It's like seek. Is this true? Is this there? And I go and I start researching, and whoa! And most of the time it is. And most of the time it's like, whoa! That was not just what I felt or so. It's there. It's there. And yeah, for about a year and a half to 2 years, I've just been blown away, Eric, by one thing after the other. It began actually when I was speaking I was asked to go by some Messianic believers to speak in Canada. And it turned out to be, it was their Jubilee year. It was the 150th year. And it was also the year of Jubilee, the prophetic year of Jubilee that's in the book. And everything, but God was bombarding me with Jubilee. Everywhere I was going, 50th year, 50th year, 50th year. So, and that was just before Trump did what he did. I won't get into it now, but it was just before that Jubilee event. So then the Lord said, this is it. I was so bombarded. And then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, we're to the point, Eric, when I gave this in, when I gave the manuscript in, was just very recently, I had to take it back because more came. There was something that had to do with the appointed word. There was an appointed word when Donald Trump was born. There was an appointed word that links to the whole mystery. So yeah, yes, it's been a mind-blowing thing for me. I'm the first one to be blown away.
Jonathan, one of the interesting parts, you and I both being Jewish, there's always a big disagreement over the Jewish calendar, and this book is not tied to. This is actually literally tied to the calendar that everybody uses. So for the naysayers that say, well, how can you look at this when Hillel made this change, and how can you do this? Is in the normalcy of all the reference points historically that we can point to, which is, I think, one of the first times that you and many others have said, I'm going to set aside tradition of Judaism, and I'm going to look chronologically at Jubilee, which is 50. And
Yes.
how does that plug in to,
Yes.
because God's talking to a natural world. He's not talking to
Yes.
a spiritual world. There's 7.5 billion people. We all have
Yes.
to get this message.
Yeah, Eric, that's a great question. No, and nobody has gone where you just went. That's great. Yes, there. First of all, we don't know when we do know when the Shemitahs are. We don't know when the Jubilee year were because they weren't. We know they were not commemorated as they should have been in the times of the Second Temple and most likely before that. So we don't have that. So what this is saying, and this is a great point, what this is saying is that God is able to speak to the world through his template, through his word, and using a way that can reach the world and saying, this is my fingerprints. In other words, I can do, the Gregorian or the calendar that people know, that I can use that same calendar to show the world the power of God. And the problem is if you try to go by the other, nobody knows when it was. So there are ideas. I've spoken about different things and possibilities, but these are prophetic patterns. God uses prophetic patterns. He uses a lamb and an actual lamb to speak about the Lamb of God, Messiah. But it's not that Messiah has wool, and it's not that, but it's a sign. These are signs. So you're absolutely right. The sign, and so therefore, in the book, you'll see it's not only the Jubilean years that go from one to the next. There's a special one that has to do with Herzl and the birth of Israel, but it's also the same pattern. So God is a God of signs. He knows how to speak to the world.
It's not fantasy. It is a presentation of what was, what is, and what is to come in reference to the life and times of the Bible and the biblical prophecies. And so you take us through the first door, and
Yes.
we have to ask the question, who is this stranger?
Okay, yeah. The first door is going to deal with the beginning of the mystery. Now, Moses, before he died, he gave a prophecy to Israel, and he said, number one, he's the first one to speak about the end times, and he said that in the end, he says, God will you have scattered to the nations, God will gather you back. He said, but before that, this is the first prophecy specific of God gathering the Jewish people back. It's in Deuteronomy. And it's at the very end. And he says, but just before it, the verses before it, he says something else before that happens. He says the land's going to be a devastation. It's going to be desolate. The land of Israel is going to be a barren wasteland. But a stranger will come from far away, and he will come to the land, and he'll bear witness of the devastation. And then after that comes the regathering of the Jewish people. So the question is, did the stranger ever come? And by the way, with each of these doors, there's about there's about 8 major streams of mysteries. We'll be able to touch probably on 1 or 2, maybe through the 7 doors or some of the 7 doors. So here's the stranger. So did it happen? Yes. A man comes from far away, comes to the land when it's at its worst, devastation, bears witness, actually writes it in his notepad, bears witness to the world. He uses the same words that Moses says he will use. Moses gives phrases. The stranger uses the same one, and he doesn't know he's doing it. And the stranger, the amazing thing is someone that people know right now, but they didn't know he was this. It's Mark Twain. Mark Twain is a skeptic, yet he's used in prophecy he speaks the words of Moses without knowing it. And he does it at that exact time. And when he comes to the end of his journey, or the peak of the journey, he gets to Jerusalem. It's his last full day and night in Jerusalem. It's a Sabbath. That means they're opening those scrolls, the appointed words, all over the world. And they're chanting the words. What's the appointed word? All over the world, the word is the prophecy, the stranger shall come to the land. And he's literally walking through the streets of Jerusalem, and he's hearing the Sabbath chanting, which is the prophecy about him. And he doesn't know it. It's amazing. God is so exact. And the thing is that when he comes, this is going to mark the beginning, because the year is 1867. This is going to, from that year, you can count everything that's going to happen, because it's going to set in motion. What people don't realize, in many ways, the end times, at least as we know it now, begins in that year. Kind of mysterious things start happening in the land, all preparing the land for the prophetic events that are going to take place in the 20th century and in our day. So it all happens then. And, you know this, Eric, but a lot of people know that for 2,000 years, the Jewish people have prayers that they pray every day. And some of the prayers are, Lord, hear our prayer, be merciful and restore us to Zion, restore us to the land. Hear our prayer, be merciful, restore us. Well, Mark Twain's name wasn't Mark Twain, it was Samuel Clemens. That's Hebrew, Samuel. Samuel means what? The Lord has heard, and Clemens means and has been merciful. I mean, who can put that together? I mean, to God.
It's extraordinary. And the description that he gave of the uninhabitable land, that this was a place that should be shunned, that God has done this miracle that we see today. You and I both go there and see the miracle laid out before our eyes, the wildflowers and the beautiful harvest. And so as this progresses and you build a relationship between the traveler, the stranger, and I don't know how to assign the one who's on the mission of discovery. How do you refer to him?
Yes, I mean, he could be called the traveler. There's kind of three people in it, or the seeker. He's the one who he's the one who has the visions. We're talking right now the narrative, that frame. It's really the delivery system of the mysteries. But he's the one who has the visions, and then the oracle each vision is linked to the mystery. So the oracle is opening these doors and revealing what it is. Yeah, you could call him the traveler. That, and again, that's the narrative part around it. And now but that's the delivery system for the mysteries.
Somehow, knowing you for as many years as I've known you, I wanted you to be one of them.
Oh, people always ask me from the Harbinger onward, are you the Noriel? Are you the prophet? Are you really it's the Lord speaking, and so I'm having a conversation, or the Spirit's having a conversation. That's really what it is, and so it's framed with that. But I say, listen, it's a bit of all of it, and then Erica, the other things you're mentioning when we come to Israel, and it's the miracle. We got to remember though that God always does those things. He lets when at its most hopeless, that's when he acts. And so it was just then at its most hopeless, that's when not only the mysterious signs start happening in the land, which we won't be, those are other mysteries in the door, we won't have time to get into it. But the thing is that right then the land starts getting restored within those years. They open the first school to plant the land. The first Jewish people start coming back, and they start streaming back into the land, and it's going to lead to the next door, the next Jubilee, if you want, next mystery. If you count 50 years from that year, where does it take you? Did anything happen of restoration? It takes you to the year 1917. Significant? That is the year. I know you know, Eric, but the Jubilee says the land shall return to the people of the land. What happens in that year? The mystery explodes into a world war. God's going to work through it. The empire that has the land, the Ottomans, who don't want the Jewish people back, they crumble, and the British Empire rises, all converging on the year of Jubilee, 1917. The Ottoman Empire is crumbling. The British Empire has two new leaders who are both raised with the Bible, Christian, and Balfour, Arthur Balfour issues the Balfour Declaration, first declaration since ancient times saying the Jewish people can go home, the land shall be given to them, Jubilee. And then another Christian, General Allenby, he ends up driving the Ottoman Empire out, and he enters the streets of Jerusalem, all in the year of Jubilee. And there's so many mysteries here, but I'll just mention one of them behind the second door. And one is this. In Daniel, there's a number that speaks about the end of the occupier, the end of the occupation. It's the number 1335. And in its context, it speaks of end-time things and has days. But the number 1335 is the end of the occupation, is linked to that from Daniel. The amazing thing is, all of a sudden, in the land of the Middle East and Israel, the number of Daniel starts appearing throughout the land, starts appearing everywhere, starts appearing on coins. Why? It turns out that how God works it all together, that year is the year in the Muslim calendar is the year 1335, which is the number in Daniel to say you have to get out, they have to get out, and it all converges in the year of Jubilee 1917. And on the actual day that it comes to its finale, on that day, it's the very day that America gives Britain the go-ahead for the Balfour Declaration, the land shall return to the Jewish people. I mean, everything happens like clockwork, and that's just a little taste. There is so much in the second door, but if we were able to, I'll try to get in, and we can, what you tell me the time. Do we have time to? Yeah, I think we do. To get in a little bit of the third door, and this is the one we're talking about here with Herzl, Theodor Herzl. people know he's the visionary of Israel, the kind of grandfather of Israel. And he had the vision. But what people don't know is that when he was a boy, he had a dream. He kept it a secret. He saw the Messiah in his dream. And the Messiah in his dream said, this boy is going to prepare my people for my coming. Tell my people I am coming. And now it's amazing because Yeshua, Jesus says, I'm not coming until my people are back in the land. It can't happen until they're back. So he does that, and he starts Zionism, the move to return to Israel. He has the Zionist Congress. They make a flag, they make an anthem, but there's no nation. But he writes down, he says, I just founded the Jewish state, but the world will laugh. But he says the whole world will know it in 50 years' time. Jubilee, 50 years. When did he say it? 1897. Count 50 years, takes you to 1947. The year that Israel is voted into existence and the whole world knows it. And I looked deeper, Eric. When I looked at the actual partition plan that brought Israel back into existence, United Nations. It has a date on it. The date is September 3rd. When you go back, I went back to this is where you talk about where God puts something on and you check it out. I went back to Herzl when he made the prophecy. The date was September 3rd. It's 50 years to the exact day. I mean, again, who could put that together? And you think of all the forces that led to that happening. But now let me give you two more really cool things from this is from the third door, and there's so much too, and there's a mystery of Truman linking to the ancient King Cyrus. I mean, there's so much, and then I know Ben Gurion, a mystery of resurrection. But here's the thing: when Israel was proclaimed by David Ben Gurion on that day, it was a Sabbath. And it came into existence on a Sabbath. That means all over the world, there are scrolls being opened up. What is the appointed word for the day that Israel, the resurrection of Israel? They're chanting, it is the prophecy where God says, in that day, I will raise up the fallen tabernacle of David. I will plant my people in the land. I will rebuild them as in ancient times. They will plant the land, rebuild the cities, and nobody will uproot them. So as all over the world, they're chanting the resurrection of Israel. Israel is being resurrected. I mean, and that was, listen, this is May 14th, the 15th. This is appointed from ages past for that day. I'll give you one more, I hope I get this in, and just how cool, the God is. And that is Moses, the first time in the Bible when God says to Israel, you shall return, in the plural, to the nation. It's the Jubilee. He says, but you shall return to your ancestral land. Well, in Hebrew, the word is just one word. It's tashuvu. You shall return, tashuvu. But in Hebrew, as you know, you're alluding to it, and that in Hebrew there's a different calendar, and there's a Hebrew calendar, and the official way of writing it is by using letters, because they didn't have numbers back then. The letters all have a numerical value. So here's the amazing thing. When you get to that first time God says, Teshuvu, to the whole nation, you shall return, it's 4 letters. Put it together, and it comes out to, indicates a year, the way you write, it comes out to the year 1948. The year that Israel returns. It was all there from the beginning, from the Jubilee, from Moses, the year of the return.
It's extraordinary that for our audience that doesn't know that the Jubilee year is the 50th year when all things are returned, all things are restored, all things are made new again. You may have lost your property through a debt, through an exchange, a sale, for whatever, but now God restores it back to its original ownership. It is a period of restoration, and one that we as a people look for in Scripture for what are these signs. So you have this Jubilean man. You have this character who is the man of Jubilee, and he plays an important part. You have almost spirit guides that are taking you, and you have to discover along with them, because it's probative. It's asking you the question, well, what do you think it's showing you? What do you think it's saying to you? Not that it's obvious and that you have this wise, long-bearded man who is filled with all the answers. He's the sage. He's the God archetype. He's not. He's a challenger. He's a little bit of probably the rabbi that you had when you were a kid, the rabbi that I had a kid, that would find anything to do to get rid of you quickly by asking you, go find out and go do the research, and then you come back to me. This is the challenge, so you have to dig, and you have to examine, and it makes you think beyond the pages of what it is that's being disclosed.
Yeah. This is again the narrative part, which is to reveal it, and it's the visions, and so there are these visions, usually using biblical archetypes, and then and actually there's more in the visions than the man reveals. So that's the first time I've ever mentioned that. There's more there that so you can get things, and of course people will get things as they're in the Lord and the Spirit that are beyond even what they see, But yeah, that it's the way to deliver it. That's the way God uses, in the prophets,
It's really extremely well done. When we take a look at these dates and we go back to the mystery of Amos 9, you talk about Daniel, you talk about 1917, 1967. Now we come to present day.
Yeah. Well, can I mention just about 67, because that's a crucial thing, if that's okay? Yeah. Okay. And how much time do we have, Eric? Are we going right through?
We're going right through.
Oh, okay. That's what I'm cool. All right. Listen. Okay. So now, when is the next Jubilee? Because it's going to lead up to where we are right now, and you're right. It's going to lead to Trump and the future. Okay. If you go from count the major cycles you have of Jubilee, the mystery. You have 1867. Then you have the next one, 1917. The land returns. Then count 50 years. What's the 50th year? Anything happen? 1967. Did anything happen? What's left is Jerusalem, because when Israel came back, they didn't have Jerusalem. Messiah said, "I'm not coming until Jerusalem." You're in Jerusalem, and you say, "Baruch haba, blessed is He." So what happens? All of a sudden, Israel didn't ask for it. You know who started the 6-Day War? The Soviet Union. It was the godless, anti-God Soviet Union that sent a word to the Arab world that Israel was attacking them, going to attack them. It was a lie. So they ended up bringing about biblical prophecy. Israel thinks they're going to actually, at the beginning, they're in gloom. They think they could lose. But by the end of that war, Israeli soldiers, after 2,000 years prophecy, they return to the gates of Jerusalem, Jubilee. Everyone shall return to their own possession, and in the year of Jubilee. So now I'll just mention a few quick mysteries from this. It's an awesome thing. There's this prophecy in Isaiah, Eric, that says where God says, it says, God will fight for Jerusalem. He'll come down as the lion and the young lion and fight for that hill, fight for that mountain, the Temple Mount. Well, here's the thing. How did Israel get Jerusalem? They sent a colonel to circle the hills of Jerusalem to stop the barrage from Jordan. And the colonel's name was Ben Ari. That leads to Jerusalem. Ari means the lion. The man who was in charge of the operation, who gave the word, the famous word, take Jerusalem, his name was Arik Regev. His name means the lion. He sends word to the intelligence officer, who is Arik Achman, who gets the word. His name is the lion. And he sends finally the word to the Mount of Olives, where the commander of the paratroopers are waiting. And it's the hero of the 6-Day War for Israel, for Jerusalem. His name is Mata Gore, Colonel Gore. Well, it's a different name, but Gore means the young lion. So you got the lion, the young. So they're entering, and the first two people to go through the gates and on the Temple Mount are Gore, Colonel Gore, and his assistant Arik Achman. The prophecy says God will fight for that mountain as the lion and the young lion. Their names together mean the lion and the young lion. And the gate that Israel goes through was the Lion's Gate, saying that it was God fighting, it was not man. And what it's also saying is when Messiah came to the first Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, he came through the gates as a lamb, but he's coming again as the lion. And I'll share just one more now let me just tell you, there's another thing, Masada. I mean, just a note on the Masada. There is so much to this thing, and there's a mystery. I won't go through it, but there's a mystery hidden in Masada for 2,000 years, waiting for the moment that Israel would come back, a prophetic mystery, and uncover it. But also, there's another thing in the oracle called the Masada algorithm, and what that is that from Masada, the timing is there saying that Israel now must return to Jerusalem, and if you take the time that Israel returned to Masada, and you take the exact number of days, I won't go through it, it's going to lead you to the exact date of June 7th, 1967, the very day that the soldiers enter the gates, Israel comes home. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And that's another thing, Eric, where something came, and I say, could this be true? And to find out, I had to search the fall of Jerusalem, the fall of Masada, and all that. But amazing. But I'll give you one more, and then we'll get to where we are here. Now, that is this. You mentioned the Jubilee in man. When the Jubilee came, what happened? You hear the sound of the shofar, the sound of the trumpet, the horn. Did that ever happen at a key moment? Well, when the Israeli soldiers get to the temple, they go through the gates, get to the Temple Mount, They hear the sound of the trumpet, the sound of the shofar. It's the Jubilee. Now, why? Because a guy is sounding it. The man is sounding it, not because it's the Jubilee. He's just sounding it. He doesn't know. Nobody is trying to fulfill the mystery. It just happens. And so the amazing thing is that you mentioned the land returns to its original form or its original state. What was the Temple Mount in its original state? It was a threshing floor, the threshing floor that David bought. In Hebrew, the word for the threshing floor, it's called the Goren. The man who sounded the trumpet on the Temple Mount, the threshing floor, was named Rabbi Goren, Rabbi Threshing Floor. And when was he born? He was born in 1917, the year of Jubilee. So his whole life is waiting, Rabbi Threshing Floor, waiting 50 years until he turns 50, that he sounds the sound of the 50th year on the threshing floor, which is his name. But not only that, Eric, when I looked even deeper, there's another meaning for the word Goren. And what does it mean? It means the horn. So here's Rabbi Horn, literally born with a name, threshing floor, horn, 50th year. It's all going to come together at that moment. I mean, his parents had to give him, his parents had to have the name. Only the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible is alive and well. And that's just a few. There's much more from the fourth door. That's the 6-day war. But now the next one's going to take us to where we are right now, and that is the fifth door.
So much of our history is tied to the Genesis 22 story of the binding of Isaac, the Akedah, the confirmation, the commemoration of the ram's horn, the ram caught in the thicket. I always envision that ram is wearing a crown of thorns. He is the archetype of the Lamb of God and the Redeemer. And yet we see Messiah comes back at the last shofar blast, the last trumpet blast. And so your story begins with a trumpet blast. It begins with the sounding of the shofar, which is the unleashing, if you will, of this pent-up prophetic word that comes spilling out, and it comes spilling out in such a way that it is a map with symbols that the traveler has to chart out and has to retain what it is he saw, and he's challenged to describe. He's challenged to make sense of it and say, what does one have to do with the other? In some cases, one doesn't have a direct correlation except for the fact that it launches into the next significant or applicable Jubilee period. If you accounted for over 3,000 years, every 50 years, there would be 60 chapters. Right? Each chapter would have to have its own Jubilee period in it, but not all of them would be significant. So we have to look at this picture that you are taking us through, which is the oracle revealing for us an anticipation, an expectation that we're going to be there at the unsealing. We may get the answer, but the longing to experience and to know that the Messiah is coming back, to know that all of this is related. And again, Jonathan Cahn, famous quote, "I am not a date setter, I am not a prophet, I do not claim to be a prophet, I do not claim to have superior knowledge. I see the patterns that God shows me, and I'm a reporter. I'm almost like a biblical journalist. I report from God what He has shown me. I don't make it up. I don't create it. I just write it down. I deliver it. This isn't my prophecy. I'm not saying that this is when it's going to happen. This is what I was shown." And I think
I never set dates unless the Lord said you have to set a date. I'm never going to do that. The point is we have to know the signs of the times, Eric. And we are in prophetic times, and the Jubilees, and good point, but because these Jubilees, as far as before that's another thing, but these are all the Jubilees of restoration, and once and the end time prophecy, and once the first one starts, it's been happening continuously, even to our day. Because if you look at the last one, what happens in the Jubilee? You don't just go back to your land, you get the right back. In other words, you are recognized, legal, right, back. Israel, that's the one thing they never got. When they came back to Jerusalem, the world refused to recognize Israel. Jerusalem, the only city capital in the world refused. I mean, that tells you something right there, because the Bible says the end time is going to focus on Jerusalem, the controversy. Well, we're watching it, you know. So, but the Jubilee restores that. So here's the thing. When was that? It didn't happen in 67. So did that happen ever? Well, it did, and it happened from America. America was part of the prophecy or the mystery, and Trump, President Trump. Doesn't matter what you think of him, one way or the other. He was used. He issued the Jerusalem Declaration, the first time in modern times, first time American president, first time any world leader recognized Jerusalem as the capital, and first time since ancient times. That's how significant it is. Even Netanyahu said this is one of the four biggest events of Israel. And interesting, every one he said is part of these doors happened at the exact time. So here is now this. He did it. So the question is, when did it happen? We'll count down. If we count down the mystery, what will it take us to? The 50th year from 1967 is the year 2017, the year of the Jerusalem Declaration. And Trump, I am sure he is not studying the Hebrew of Leviticus. You know, he's just doing it. So it came within like 30 days of the end of that Jubilee. So it happens like clockwork. It goes forth. This is gigantic. It actually follows the pattern. When I looked at the words, Eric, it follows the pattern of Cyrus's declaration in amazing ways. But let me tell you now. You mentioned this, but when he talked about the trumpet and all. Well, you know, when the Jubilee, you have the Jubilee. What's the sign? Is the trumpet. You have the horn. You have the shofar. Jubilee. You need a trumpet. Your trumpet. It goes for the Jubilee. So what does the president's name mean in English? It means trumpet. So, I mean, trumpet, think about it. How awesome God is that you have a man called Trumpet, and he comes to power when? 2017, year of Jubilee. The Trump must come for the Jubilee. In the year of Jubilee, you're going to be focusing on the Trump. Well, we've been focusing on the Trump. And the Bible says that the Trump will sound. Well, through the year of Jubilee, it'll sound throughout the land. Well, it hasn't stopped sounding. It's been tweeting too, but sometimes we wish it would. But the point is, he sounded throughout the land. And not only that, but before the Jubilee was over, what does the Bible say? When the trumpet sounds, the right of the land will return back to its original owner. Well, he sounded, and literally his sound caused Jerusalem legally to return to the Jewish people by right. I mean, again, you know, you couldn't make this up. And the thing is, on top of that, I won't go through it, but there was a word on the day when I looked at this. This is where I had to take back the manuscript. On the day that Donald Trump was born, there was an appointed word proclaimed throughout the world. And it is all linked to this mystery. In fact, it's as his life. Here's a guy named Trump, and listen, the other Jubilee, who's the central guy? Rabbi Horn. Now you got President Trump. I mean, and God has a sense of humor too. You know, and God is the one who actually in the Bible, he gives names that mean something later to their purpose. So the thing is that it's like his whole life is waiting. The trumpet's waiting, and for the Jubilee. So he had to come out. Not that he knew it, but it came to power. And amazingly too, Eric, is the word that was appointed for Trump's birth was the same word that caused Rabbi Goren to take the shofar through the 6-day war for that moment. I mean, you know, now I'll give you one more of this because we'll go into the door that opens the future, yes, of the oracle. But the thing is that, you know, when we know that there was once before a king made a declaration recognizing Jerusalem and saying return and the right of the Jewish people, and that famous one was King Cyrus. And we've heard, you know, people said Trump is a Cyrus before he came to power because he didn't know he was being used of the Lord. But it gets so much deeper, because the first thing is, when did Cyrus issue that declaration? It says after 70 years, the exile, 70 years. The Jeremiah says after 70 years. Well, so could a Trump have done that after 70 years, a period significant in Israel? What happens if you go back 70 years? It pinpoints the year 1947. Again, same year pinpointed by Herzl, 50 year, and it's the year that Israel is voted into existence. So Trump did it after 2017, and that's when it is. But I look deeper because, you know, they were saying, like, when did he do it? And he wasn't, you know, Trump does, you know, he does things as he feels to do them. But this is amazing. It wasn't just that he did it in that year. I looked, Eric, at the day that Israel was voted into existence. November 29th, 1947, United Nations. But it was after sunset, so it was the 17th day of the Hebrew month, Kislev 17. So what happens if you go from that day and you fast forward 70 years, Kislev 17, it says after. So it says that in Jeremiah, after. The first day of after is Kislev 18. What day does it fall on? It falls on December 6, 2017. December 6, 2017, Kislev 18 is the exact day that Trump issued the Jerusalem Declaration after 70 years to the exact day. I mean, and think about this, Eric, the ramifications. If we were alive in 47 and we knew the mystery, we could say Israel's coming back. Well, 70 years later, there will be a man who comes to world power, and he will be a man who issues a declaration concerning Jerusalem and Israel. And actually, according to Cyrus, it will happen in his first year of world power. It all came true exactly according to the mystery.
In the book, glass shatters to the ground. The pieces are laying there, and it's almost undone, and it becomes a puzzle that comes together in a way that is really quite astonishing. It's not just your jigsaw puzzle you do at home on the card table, but it leads us into the connection, the interconnection that all of the mysteries and all of the power of the Jubilees come together into becoming what would be considered to be irrefutable and absolute, because they all fit.
Yes. This is, you're talking, now you're speaking, Eric, and again, I am so glad you read it, because, not every host can read it in time, and you're bringing out things that are not brought up. Yes, that is the puzzle, or the final part, or it says the missing piece, the last piece, that's in behind the sixth door. In the sixth door, it focuses on what is to come. The sixth door in the oracle is all about that, what is yet to come, and some things are already beginning. One example, and it leads up to what you're talking about, is that one of the grand, really, archetype mystery of the end times is in the Jubilee, because the Jubilee, what is it? It's return, tashavu, return, you shall return. When you look at all these things, what's happening? The Jubilee says you have to return to where you were at the beginning. You left there was a departure, you got to go back to it. Well, where were the Jewish people at the beginning of the age? They were in Israel, so they have to go back. Where were they? In Jerusalem, 70 AD. They have to go back, so they are. But it's not just that. The mystery goes now to another dimension, because it's the whole world. Where was the world 2,000 years ago at the beginning of the age? It wasn't Christian. It wasn't Judeo-Christian. It was pagan. It was anti-Christian, unchristian, persecuting. Well, what are we witnessing? What the mystery says, the world shall return to its original state, the world culture. I mean, there can be revival, but it's saying world culture. Well, what are we watching? Every single day, you turn on the television, you look on the internet, and you see another sign of America, a world culture, turning away, returning to its original pagan state, the pagan values, and also anti-Christian, anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-Messianic. It's happening. Well, that's all part of the mystery. Don't be shaken. God is in control. One of the things this is telling you. So the thing is that has to happen too. But the good side of it is, on the other side, there's another mystery called the stained glass metamorphosis, and that is that where were the people of God 2,000 years ago, or what's been called the church? Where was the faith through that? It wasn't in stained glass windows. It wasn't with riches. It was the Book of Acts in Jerusalem. So what is the mystery? As the world goes, as the Jewish people return to Israel, as the world returns to its original state, the people of God have to return to our original state, which is Book of Acts, radical, revolutionary, prophetic, world-changing, life-changing, and another thing, back to its Jewish roots, because it means now we're seeing, you're here, I'm here. That's all part of the return, because the church was originally in its Jewish roots, Jew and Gentile together. Well, that's happening more and more. So it's all, and actually what happens in the world is going to only further those who stand. I mean, some will fall away, but those who stand, it's going to cause us to become like the apostles. So it's the worst of times and the best of times. There's so much more, but let me get to what you just said. What's that puzzle piece that you spoke about? What is that puzzle leading to? Well, what is the mystery of the Jubilee? The owner of the land leaves the land, and then at the end comes back. Well, where does this all begin? The Jewish people left Jerusalem in 70 AD. The Book of Acts, the apostles left a bit earlier than that, from many of them. But that's not the beginning. The beginning is one leaves Jerusalem, and that one is Mashiach, Messiah. His feet leave the Mount of Olives. They leave Jerusalem, and that's why, Eric, the whole world is following that mystery. Even when most of our people, the Jewish people, didn't follow him, they're still following him. He leaves Jerusalem, we leave Jerusalem. But what is it saying? The mystery is that what is left has got to come back. So here, all these returns that you speak about, that we saw, how real they are, I mean, how exact they are, they're all leading up to one return, the return of the king. What is the Jubilee? The king was separated from his kingdom. The king will come back to his kingdom. His feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives on a day when all nations come against Israel. And then there shall be the Jubilee for this world, the lion and the lamb, and peace on this earth. So this is all the mystery leading. It's from him. He's the Alpha, the Omega. It's all leading from him and to him. And the other thing is, Eric, is that not only is it leading that, but there's also, and you know this because you read the book, but we skimmed the surface. We can only do that because there's so much. But hopefully we gave a good taste or presentation of what this is. But the other thing about it is that it's also very personal. You know that when you get to the seventh door, and that's a mystery door, it gets very personal. Because why? Because all of us are part of the mystery. This is also the mystery of our lives. It's the mystery of our entire life. Our entire life is we lost our possession. We lost our inheritance, what we were made to be. But our whole salvation is being restored to, what is it? It's reversing it. God brought Israel back to tell everybody that he's the God who brings us back, all of us. It's spiritually. And so there's the mystery that is how do we are to apply this to our life and live in the power of restoration, of Jubilee. God is real and we must live in it. And the other thing is that if you read the end of the Bible, it's a glimpse of the seventh Jubilee. You read the end of the Bible, what is it? It's that at the beginning of this whole story, we lost our home. We lost Eden. What is the whole thing? It's a departure, Jubilee. What is salvation, Messiah? He is the Jubilee. And what is the end? It says that, the tree of life is back. The river is back. We are heading where? We are heading home. It's the restoring of paradise. And not only that, when we've looked at every Jubilee, you could see a pattern. One of them is everything links to Jerusalem. It all ends up in Jerusalem. Well, where are we going to end up? In Jerusalem, the same way. It's the ultimate Jubilee, which is forever. That's when it says the Lord will wipe away every tear from our eyes. He will wipe, there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. Then for the first time, Eric, we will say, we're home. You see, in this world, we're not home. But there we will be. That's Jubilee. So there is so much, but the point is, I hope you can, I want you to share what's on your heart. But this is a taste of it. Of course, I'm not a promoter, but the Oracle just came out, or it's going to be everywhere, and I know you would as well, but that people can open it up because there's so much there. We touched on a fraction of it, but it's everywhere, Amazon and Walmart, everywhere where books are, you can get the Oracle. But also I'm praying that people don't just get it for themselves to be blown away, but to give it to unsaved people who are not believers, because this is really, I believe, you've read it, is an explosion of the reality of our God. That the God of Israel, the God of the Bible, is the God of everything right now, today, and that it's for unbelievers. And I also pray that it gets to also Jewish people, because this is really that way, and non-Jewish people, but also to Israel. People can pray for that. But what it's telling you is that, listen, if anything, God is real. His word is true. He is the God of everything. When it looks like everything's out of control in the world or in your life, he's real. It looked out of control for 2,000 years for the Jewish people. It wasn't. And it's not out of control for your life. He's the God of your life. It says he pieces all those puzzle pieces together. He will do it. And if he's also the God of restoration. So if he's the God who restored Israel, our land, he's also the God who will restore your life. He is awesome. He's real. And he's amazing.
At the end of the book, you talk about the fact that you came to a crossroads and asked the question, do you truly believe in God? And you say, up until this point, I believe, but I had my moments. I was vigorious. I believe, but forgive my unbelief. But after this experience, I am absolutely 100% convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. And my takeaway from the reading of the Oracle is this is not the salvation message. This is a message of the faithfulness and the consistency of God, who is the God of order, who sets time in motion to accomplish what he said he would do. And in Genesis 15, he said he was going to do something, and he was going to give us this land. That is the inheritance of every Jew and every person that puts their faith in the Jewish Messiah who's engrafted into this. This is your inheritance too, and you should be anxiously awaiting the fulfillment of Genesis 15, and it has never yet occurred. We have never been had sovereignty over that quadrant of land that God promised. And this opens up the door to understanding that not only are we in the season of that fulfillment, but we can taste it. We can smell it. We can feel the shifting winds. We can tell that something is astir. Whether or not it's war that's going to bring it about, but it's going to come out through revelation, and it will be God's most magnificent Jubilee of all. It's the restoration of all things. Jonathan Cahn, author of The Oracle. Find him on the web. You can go to theoraclemystery.com, hopeoftheworld.org. Get involved with his ministry. Subscribe, watch his podcast, listen to his messages. They are always, and listen, I'm telling you, 23 years I have been listening to the mysteries. All of them going back 23 years.
Wow.
As each mystery was being birthed and developed, and pieces and parts of it were, once a year I got to sit and hear the pieces and parts of each one of these mysteries that you revealed. And I'm right in there with you, my brother, and I thank you.
Thank you,
God
Eric.
Bless you and all the works of your hand.
Thank you, Eric.
Love to Renata, the kids.
You too, keep up the great work, and it's always a joy. God bless you,
Thank you so
Eric.
much. God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.